can actually gain access to vet things very, very simply.
Yeah, equally, China has an equivalent of the Companies House in the UK, the State Administration of Industry and Commerce. And most of those, or at least many of those provincial AIC offices also have online databases. So if, I'm going through this with a client at the moment where they're looking at a source of product, they've got 4 or 5 companies they're looking at, and they say, can you help us to verify? So the first thing we'll do, just go online, look at the AIC records, and see, is this the person who owns the company? Was the company set up at the time they said it was set up? And what we're looking for is not necessarily evidence of wrongdoing, but it's red flags, like you say, inconsistencies. So one of these companies has said that they've been a high-profile manufacturing business for 10 years. You look at their IC report, and they've only been set up a year ago. So, well, look, if they're lying about that, they're probably lying about other things. So we would recommend you don't even bother investigating this company any further, because that red flag is telling us that nothing good will come with the relationship. So some of these things are very easy to see at a very early stage. But all too often we find that people only sort of press the panic button when a bad thing has already happened, or they're in the middle of a crisis. Because by that stage, there are some things you can do to mitigate, but it's often too late.
Now, moving on from sort of like the desk-based due diligence, once you've found that a potential business partner or client or investor has ticked all those boxes, you then sort of like looking into sort of the quantitative data and figures. Like here in the UK, to give you an example that we experience personally here at China Daily is in terms of third-party circulation verification. Here in the UK we have BPA and we have ABC that externally verifies that the information that we give to advertisers about our circulation is credible. This is not the case in China. When you encounter issues of data where you need to get third-party verification, would one expect to have to be paying extortionate amount of consulting fees and forensic accounting fees?
Yeah. I think people often overestimate the cost of assessing these things, and that means that they don't ever do it, but actually they still pay the cost in the end when things go wrong. So you can do a lot of this stuff relatively cheaply. And there's another book in the Palgrave system that actually just come out last month, Myth-Busting China's Numbers, which looks at how to best use Chinese data. So, it's about having multiple sources, it's about understanding how that data has been generated, and also when it was generated, because, as we know, if it's a year old, it's probably out of date. So you can use a lot of that top-down analysis to benchmark what's going on, but you also really need to do bottom-up analysis. So if you're looking at a specific company, you absolutely have to go and do a site visit. You have to put somebody there to look at the business. Is it an apartment in a residential block in Shenzhen when it says it's a factory? Very basic issue that often actually happens. And you can immediately say, look, this is a massive red flag because they shouldn't be operating what they say is this business in this location. Or as happened with the short sellers like Muddy Waters dealing with overseas listed Chinese companies, you put somebody outside the factory door and you count how many trucks are coming in and out, and you work out that there's no way that they can be doing the volume of business that they claim. The other issue is that you look at Chinese companies' financials, and again, it's an open secret that a lot of Chinese companies have more than one set of books, one for the tax man, one for the shareholders, maybe one for somebody else. We've got one example from an investigator I spoke to where he did a forensic examination of a company's hard drives. He found 12 sets of accounts in one company. Yeah. So you can't believe the set of accounts necessarily. You can't take on trust that the set of accounts you're presented with is going to be real. You have to cross-check it. You have to do a sense check on it.
So even if the accounts add up, you have to look beyond the numbers.
Yeah. So another big case from I think it was last year or the year before was Caterpillar, who invested a large amount of money in a Chinese equipment manufacturer, and they had due diligence done by a firm of accountants, And what I suspect happened is they said to the accountants, look at this set of books, tell us if they add up. And of course the books added up perfectly, but bore very little relation to the actual business. And within a matter of months they had to write off, I can't remember, 80 or 90% of the value of the investment, because the business simply didn't stack up to the paper accounts. So you always have to, in the due diligence process, A, not rely on what the party who you're going to be giving money to tells you, because they have a vested interest. You have to do your independent verification, and you have to do a sense check. You know, does it sound too good to be true? Do people in the industry think it sounds right? Do the suppliers claim to be suppliers actually supply them? If they're saying that, you know, we supply the top 5 businesses in this industry in China, go out and talk to those 5 businesses. Look at their products. Is the supply in those products? Do the people there tell you that they're buying the products? It's easy to do, and it's not secrets. You know, you're just asking people questions and you're looking at what's physically there.
So it's almost like doing things at the two opposite ends of the extreme. First step, doing easily accessible desk-based due diligence on services that are readily available that a lot of people don't seem to be bothering to do. And then at the very end is sort of like just getting on the ground and looking at the operation with your own 2 eyes and making
you know,
a judgment
for a few $100s, you can get somebody probably tomorrow to go and visit a factory of your choice anywhere in China. It's not expensive, but it is essential.
Well, I think that's about the time that we have, but I would like to open the floor to any of the audience if anybody has any questions about anything specific that was covered. No? Yeah?
Yeah, well, so question, but just in the example you gave of GSK being used as sort of big foreign company to be beaten, you know, with a big stick, why, just a general question, your opinion, why were they used, why they end up being, you know, beaten with a stick as opposed to any other multinational business, as it were? I mean, you mentioned others who've had problems, but why were they ones who particularly, obviously they're very profile name, everyone knows them, but why them? Why not someone else?
Why not
Well,
Pfizer?
I think that to be fair to GSK, there are probably half a dozen or more international pharmaceutical companies that have been visited by the Public Security Bureau, and other arrests have been made in the industry. GSK is kind of the first big high-profile one. My understanding is that GSK had, and some of the other companies, had these corruption issues raised sometime before. It's something they've been looking at. And the reporting suggests that this is one of the reasons why they specifically had an anti-corruption investigation going on. Now, in a corruption probe, there's 2 sides. The side that is giving the money and the side that is taking the money. The side that is taking the money may include hospital staff, government officials, so it starts tapping into the government's own anti-corruption campaign. Now again, there's a lot of hearsay around it, but obviously there are sensitivities when people start feeling that they're under pressure, and you know, there are lives at risk, there is the risk of jail, all these things going on. And I think one of the reasons that this kicked off with GSK, you have the top-down kind of central government policy that is putting pressure on it. But I think there were also some local issues around individuals who felt under pressure, who had very strong links with the local security apparatus, and those relationships meant that the local security bureau was specifically targeting this British investigator and this British company. So I don't think it was just random. You know, I think there's more to it than meets the eye, but they are not the only firm that is suffering it, and there will be more. And in fact, there's one of the big international companies, Actavis, which is a generics company, actually made the decision recently to pull out of China altogether. They just said, too risky, not enough profit, we're pulling out altogether. So you might also see other companies make that same judgment that actually the risk is no longer worth it. For most, of course, it is still worth it. They have to get China right. It's such a big part of the business, and it's such a big story for the future. But it's not going to be for everybody.
Yeah.
But sort of links all this, the